Good afternoon. We will call this meeting to order. This is a Finance and Government Operations Committee of the City Council. All committee members, I believe, are present this evening via Zoom. And we are holding this meeting remotely so that everyone can participate safely while we are conducting business under a public health emergency. We appreciate your patience as this FGO committee meeting is conducted this way. Members of the public will be able to speak to the committee if they have signed up for public comment per the rules published on Friday with today's agenda. Members of the public will be moved from the Zoom waiting room into the meeting room. They will remain muted until they are called upon to speak, at which point they will have a minute and a half to provide comment to the committee. After that, they will again be muted. Members of the public, city staff, and the media have the ability to view this meeting live through YouTube. The live stream can be accessed from most smartphones, tablets, or computers. For those watching on the live stream, thank you for joining us. We'll start with public comment. Will the Zoom moderator, Mr. Moya, please move all members of the public who are signed up to speak? We'll give that just a moment.
Doesn't say her audio is connected. We can try.
Okay. We do have one person signed up for a public comment, um, but we're not sure that her name that's Lynn Anderson. Miss Anderson, are you able to speak to us? It shows that you're not muted, but I can't tell if you can hear us or if you're able to be heard.
I'm not too sure. You may want to ask Councilor Borrego if she wanted to speak during this time.
Okay. Counselor Borrego, I was told that you might want to address the committee. Would you like to take that opportunity now?
I would. Thank you, Counselor. That would give me the opportunity to do some other things that I really need to get done. So I am here to speak about the tax bill, the transportation tax bill. And I just want to support the council in that effort. And I know Counselor Benton has been working really hard with uh, Pat Montoya and municipal development to come up with a list that is agreeable to all the counselors. I know that you all know that I have a big project in my area is Paseo del Norte, which is a huge need, and it really is a health and safety issue. And we have received some money from the state of New Mexico, capital outlay to expand that. And I just would love for the counselors to support that project as part of that transportation tax. And I know that's on your agenda today. So thank you so much for letting me speak, Counselor Gibson. I truly appreciate it. And I would urge the counselors to support that as well.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
Counselor.
Thank you.
So let's try Miss Anderson again. Okay, we're still having issues. Maybe we can try a little bit later during the meeting. So let's go to the next item on the agenda. We're at item A. This is EC 135, the agreement with Albuquerque Housing Authority utilizing Community Development Block Grant funds in the amount of $1,639,655.88 to complete the roof replacement project for public housing. I'm going to move approval on this. Counselors, do you have any questions for administration on that? Yes, Counselor Davis.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I was just offering a second.
Oh, there's a second. All right. Thank you for that second. Does anybody else have any comments for this? I would just like to add, I'm very glad to see this, and I'm so very happy that that council and the city can help Albuquerque Housing Authority with a backlog of deficiencies that need to be taken care of, mostly roofing, which is a tall order, whether you're doing an apartment building or even a single family home. So if there are no questions, does the administration have any comments that they'd like to make on this? I don't see, was that a hand raised? Oh, all right. Director Pierce, there you are. I didn't see your hand up.
Oh, thank you. I look kind of small. Thank you, Counselor Gibson and council members. I wanted to just say thank you, and I did want to let you know, just to quantify it, because it really is good information. In the original agreement, there were 150 roofs that were going to be replaced, and now with this amendment, there's 82 additional roofs. So these are all things needed to be done for public housing. So just wanted to give you those numbers and say thank you very much.
Well, thank you for that. I didn't realize that was the number. But as I mentioned, I'm really happy that we're doing this for them so that they can do it for the people who they're housing. So with that, we'll go ahead and turn this over to Ms. Hinojos for a roll call.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena, Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes,
That passes on 4-0 vote.
thank you. And I misspoke earlier. I said all counselors were present. We expect all counselors on this, assigned to this committee to be here. And there she is, right on cue. I was just saying that we expected everybody to be here, and I knew that you were going to be here shortly. So, hello and welcome, Counselor Pena. So we just did item A, so now we're moving to item B, which is Counselor Davis's 082. Would you like to introduce this, Counselor? Mr.
Thanks,
President.
Madam Chair. 082 adds a new section to the city's criminal code or code of ordinances relating to responsible firearm storage. Essentially what this says, and I know there's a write-up available and I'm sure we'll have some discussion on it, but essentially what this says is that if you own a firearm in the city of Albuquerque and you walk away from it, you should just put it in a place where it can be stored responsibly and not easily accessible to children or to persons who might take it and use it. I'd love to give more background on it, but for purposes of getting us started, Madam Chair, I'd move it to pass on 082.
All right. So is there a second for 082? If not, I'll second. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any questions from counselors, comments? Or from the administration? Counselor Bassan. Hi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sure my questions have been planned on, maybe. Several questions about this. We have our guns in a safe, so we already are very good about that in my house, to make sure that our children are safe as well. So will criminals that, if these guns have the locks on them, are they able to be removed and pried off? And what will prevent them if somebody does break into a car and steal somebody's firearm while they're inside of someday, maybe hopefully inside of a restaurant? How does that work with making sure that they still don't steal them?
Madam Chair, if I can respond.
Yes.
Counselor, thanks for that question. I know you and I are going to have a couple of chances to go back and forth on these. So the short answer is, and as you may know, in 2018, the Albuquerque Police Department reported that more than 1,000 firearms were stolen from vehicles in the city of Albuquerque. All of those ended up on our streets, contributing to our gun problem and our gun violence problem when they're accessible and cheap. So in other words, if you can go down somebody's street, for example, break into 10 cars, and you're likely to find a gun in one of them, it encourages those types of thefts as well, and auto thefts and burglaries as well. The fact is, like, any good criminal with enough time and effort can get through just about anything. But the point of this is to ensure that it's not easily accessible. And so the simple answer is, if you go inside your house at night, simply take your gun with you so that it's not an attractive target, for example, for the burglars, as you mentioned. Or if you need to leave it in your car, for example, outside a restaurant, to simply do more than just place it under your seat, but to secure it with a gun lock, secure it in a trunk lock, in a onboard lock of some kind in your vehicle that are available from third parties. And as you know, the U.S. Department of Justice and the city of Albuquerque provides some of those free of charge.
Thank you, Councilor Davis. And Madam President, I have several more questions, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I do want to say that I get the fundamental basis of this. I mean, I get where it's coming from, and I completely understand that. But of course, I also am wondering where we have that boundary between making sure that the criminals don't have easy access to firearms while also not sort of criminalizing, or at least making people feel criminalized for having to lock up their stuff, when right now there's a lot of people that feel like they need to take upon their own defense, right? And people in Albuquerque are really, really concerned about the dangers. So, should we focus on making sure that people can't get to their guns as easily in the case of an emergency, or should we maybe focus on the root cause of why children in specific too, because in this legislation, it says about the increased level of suicide due to firearms. So what about why children are wanting to to commit suicide? So what about why they're doing that and finding ways to treat that, rather than just saying, okay, no, we have to lock up everything for the people that are doing the right thing? What's the plan there with making sure that we do that? And then second to that, because it's very related, is in that study that says suicide was, minimized when firearm accessibility was taken away. Was there other research done on if maybe suicide increased using a different method of tactic for that?
Madam Chair, if I may respond. So Councilor Bassan, as you mentioned, like, there are other causes of suicide, there are other contributors, but the fact is this is one of those that's one of the leading factors involved in suicide. And so when you're dealing with those behavioral health issues, and we know that county voters put forth a lot of money through our own tax to work on those issues, and the county and the city are working together. But the fact is, when someone has made that decision, the factor that makes a difference is the accessibility or the ease of accessing a firearm. What this legislation does is makes it very simple. And there's no impediment to a person having a firearm within their reach, within their control, if they want to defend themselves. But if you walk away, so if you leave your home and leave firearms and children together in your home, common sense, and you're a great mom, common sense says that you lock those up where the kids can't get them. Unfortunately, common sense is not that common. And so we're providing another reminder, another incentive to remind people to do that. More importantly, though, When we're looking at these issues, we know that when a person is looking to make that decision, if there's a firearm accessible, that seems to contribute to the suicide. When there's an intervention, in other words, when it's not accessible and they have to go through extra steps, there's more likely that someone, sorry, my dog is excited about this legislation.
That's
There's
okay.
more opportunity for somebody to intervene as they're delaying that decision. We're not going to stop every instance of suicide. We're not going to stop every instance of burglary or gun violence, but we can take a big step forward by taking those 1,000 guns off the streets of the city of Albuquerque with gun owners who are responsible.
And so, Counselor, how do you, like, what's the plan for enforcement?
So the bottom line is that on the enforcement on this, officers don't have the power to just inspect anybody's home just because they want to. They still have, we all maintain our Fourth Amendment rights. But the fact is that if you are missing a firearm and you've left it unattended, the police could cite you for that. That's why we added a provision here that says that the court may dismiss this case, or APD may dismiss this case if after you say you had a gun stolen from your vehicle, for example, you show proof that when you replaced that firearm, you did so with a type of lock that would prevent it. This case would be dismissed. And so there's really an incentive for you to cooperate and not to penalize someone who made a bad decision.
And thank you, Counselor. And then how does this work with out-of-town people that come into our city that are not aware of necessarily our ordinances, and then they get punished as well? Or is that saying that APD has the right to dismiss it and say, never mind, because you didn't know better?
Well, it works the same way of all our ordinances, Counselor. Thanks. It's a great question. So, for example, we have lots of ordinances on the books that this council passes that aren't handed out at the border, so to speak. Everything from different littering fines, Counselor Borrego passed last year, all the way down to traffic codes, and lots of, as you know, lots of city ordinances governing when and how you can use parks and public places. So it's incumbent on a firearm owner to be responsible. But again, we've crafted this very narrowly to include a piece that incentivizes and encourages someone to, even if they are deficient and didn't secure their firearm the first time, to incentivize them to go out, find a lock when they replace that firearm so that they don't have to worry about this penalty. Also, I should point out that even if someone were to violate this and just refuse to cooperate or refuse to sort of do the right thing, it's still a misdemeanor. And so that means that it wouldn't have any bearing whatsoever on their ability to purchase or own a firearm in the future.
Thank you, Counselor. Again, I just want to say, I get it fundamentally. I mean, I want to protect kids. I want to protect people. I want to increase our safety. I only wish people were making their own choices to ensure that their guns and their ammunition were all locked up and safe when they're not being used. I don't think I agree with the part where the gun needs to, or the firearm needs to be separate from the ammunition, and it needs to be, there's a lot of parameters in here that I think are a little bit infringing without really having that ability to enforce. So even though I'm hoping that we can reduce harm and we can reduce the damage done by firearms and suicide and accidents, I feel like right now this is not going to be the best method about going about it. So I'm sure you'll be surprised to hear that I'm not going to be able to support this.
Okay, also Counselor Sena, I believe your hand was up first, and then Counselor Pena.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. My question to the sponsor was just really some background information. From my understanding, I know that this was discussed also at the state legislature. Is there any legislation that actually encourages the use of safe storage for firearms?
Counselor, thank you for asking. To my knowledge, there's not. You're right. There has been some conversation about it, but the legislature has not been able to take action or hasn't gotten a bill through either chamber yet, to my knowledge.
Thank you.
All right, and now we'll go to Counselor Pena.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to send this to full council without recommendation. I just don't really see, I mean, I appreciate the sponsor's intent with this. It doesn't seem like it really would, I don't see anything happening with this bill. I just think that, I don't know how we can legislate personal responsibility. I don't know. So I'd make a motion to send it to full council with no rec.
Okay, so,
Hassan has her hand raised. I think it's a second.
okay. Counselor Bassan, your hand is raised? Second time?
I'm seconding that.
Oh, a second, okay. Right. So actually, the first motion was a motion for passage of the bill. So we need to do something with that motion before we can handle yours. So Counselor Davis, did you want to change your motion, amend your motion, or do you want to hold your motion?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll hold my motion, but I recognize that the new motion would supersede mine, so I'm happy to vote on the motion for no rec. I'll just make an argument against it. I would vote against it, and here's why. I would be happy with either motion that moves this forward to the full council. I do think it's a conversation we should have as a whole city and as a whole council. But again, usually what we do on no rec is for something that we feel like this committee maybe hasn't resolved any amendments or other issues. I think it's been well written. I think we work closely with staff to try to figure out how to balance those issues. I think it's important. I think we can move it to council on the recommendation of this committee that it pass and send a strong message that we care about responsible ownership in the city. To Councilor Pena's point, and then I'll just end, Madam Chair, and let the sponsor of the motion do her close. But I'd say it is our obligation to look at issues of personal responsibility when people are not responsible. We pass seatbelt laws. We pass laws requiring certain types of child restraints in vehicles when they're operated in the city of Albuquerque at the state level as well. We pass lots of laws regarding personal responsibility, all the way down to being sure that you have to shovel your sidewalk and pick up your trash can from the curb on trash day. And so that is I think that's a good role for our city. And in a city plagued with gun violence and with a rash of guns easily available in our city, I think it's not irresponsible to ask an owner to do their part to try to take those out of circulation where possible. And for that reason, I would oppose the motion for no rec.
All right, so just so I'm clear, Counselor Davis, is your motion then a deferral? Were you moving a deferral? Or are you staying with your original motion?
I'll stay with my original motion, ma'am, but I said I think we have to vote on the no rec first since it's new, if that's right.
No, actually,
Oh, you're right.
the first motion is the one that takes precedence. I'm getting that from information from staff.
All right. Sorry, I was distracted. You're right. So I will hold on the motion to move forward with a recommendation to pass.
All right. So if there are no other comments or questions on that, we'll go ahead and move for a roll call vote.
Counselor Bassan,
No.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
No.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
That passes on a 3-2 vote.
Thank you. Now, moving on to item C. Counselor Davis, this one is yours as well. 083, would you introduce it, please?
Sure, Madam Chair. And I want to say thank you to the chair and our other co-sponsor, Councilor Benton, who I know is watching from the side here. And so perhaps if he wants to weigh in, I want to ask if the chair would be so inclined to let him do so as a co-sponsor, even if he's not a member of the committee. But first and foremost, I'll make a motion to do pass 083. 083 adds a new section to Chapter 12, Article 2 of the revised ordinances of the city. It prohibits firearms at city facilities. I move it do pass.
And I'll second that. So Counselor Benton, did you want to wait till towards the end, or do you want to go ahead and make a comment now?
Yes, I'll just quickly comment. I know that this is stepping out somewhat further than the previous bill, which I think was eminently responsible and reasonable. And this one is, let's all accept. If passed and if moved forward, this will be challenged. I certainly hope that the previous one would not The previous one is about responsible gun ownership, and I totally support that, utterly support that. I support this strongly as well, but, you know, recognizing there are some questions about this bill. And I think it can be characterized as that. And our public places are for the people, right? And these are places oftentimes where there are children, oftentimes where there is discord. Let's accept that too. When there's discord, whether it be about a statue or the right to assemble and discuss, you know, state your grievances in the public square, i.e. Civic Plaza. These are places where there has to be some safety in free speech. And there has to be some safety in protecting one's family when they go to a facility that they paid their taxes to build and maintain and operate. Senior centers, parks, and yes, Civic Plaza. So, although I recognize that this is stepping out there a bit, I think the city of Albuquerque should do that. And of course, I'm co-sponsoring with Vice President Gibson and your chair to put that before the state government as well. Albuquerque includes some of the most violent activity in New Mexico and the most criminal activity, no question about it, as any large city that's largely in the center of a rural state, or in the center of a largely rural state, excuse me, put that right, would be. And we're home rule municipality. Without question, this brings to the fore some discussions that we need to have. And for that reason, I urge your support. And thanks for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Councilor Benton. I see two hands, Councilor Pena and Councilor Bassan, and I don't know who raised their hand first, so let's go to Councilor Pena.
So there hasn't been a second on the motion, so I'd like to make a motion to move this to full council with no rec. And the reason I'm doing this, even on the previous bill, is that, you know, we have 5 counselors here. There's 4 counselors that their views aren't being, you know, representative outside of Councilor Benton. That I think it's important when we're having these kinds of sensitive discussions that in a committee that we are looking at our city fairly. And I think that if I wasn't on this committee, I wouldn't want this decision to be made by the 5 counselors that's going to impact our city so dramatically.
And Madam Chair, for the record, I'll second Councilor Pena's motion for a no rec.
All right. Thank you, Councilor Davis. Then we'll move along then to, what was the other hand? Oh, Councilor Bassan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You know, I mean, given that we're gonna be looking to move this with no recommendation, I'll just hold on to my thoughts till full council.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Anyone from administration? Okay, if not, I would just like to, oh, sorry, I didn't have my video on. I would just like to add that, you know, we're learning more and more to err on the side of caution, using a preponderance of caution for that many times over. I don't think this is a preponderance of caution. Actually, I think that it's a responsible way to help ensure safety, not only of the visitors, the people who come to, example, City Hall, but other places as well, libraries, community centers, senior centers, but also the staff, the people who work for the city. And I think that we do owe them at least the least necessity that we can give them. And in this case, just asking people to not bring their firearms into these places. So I'm looking forward to a good, solid debate, and we'll go ahead and have a roll call vote now.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes on 5-0 vote.
Oh, thank you. So I don't know if this is a good time. Do we still have Miss Anderson? Yes, we do have her. I'm not sure which bill. I'll go ahead. We'll go ahead and hear from Miss Anderson now. You were our only public commenter signed up, and there was some technical problems, I think, that have been cleared up. So Miss Anderson, if you'd like to give us your comments. And me, oh, that looks hopeful. We can't hear you. It looks like you're unmuted. Okay, we'll just go ahead and continue with our next item, item E, and then we'll try to get back to Miss Anderson in a little bit. Item E is 018. I'll move this for Councilor Benton. It's imposing a municipal gasoline tax of 2 cents per gallon, conditional upon voter approval, dedicating the revenue generated by the municipal gasoline tax to rehabilitate streets and roadway systems for the benefit of the city. I'll move a do pass. Do I have a second? There's a second from Councilor Davis. Any questions or comments from councilors? Councilor Sena, was that your hand raised? Go ahead, please.
And just for clarification, we're on item E, not D.
Oh, I skipped D. I did. I lined right through it. Well, let's go ahead and stay on E since we've already introed it. Sorry for that.
I do have a question on item E, since we're on it, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. I just, I am a bit concerned about a gasoline tax at this moment because I see it more of a progressive tax, but I'm interested in what the full council would have a discussion on this, especially how a tax such as this could impact Black, Indigenous people of color. So I would like to actually make this good to go to full council without recommendations so that we can have a discussion among our full council.
Second.
All right, Councilor Benton, your hand was raised.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I support the discussion at the full council. I realize that this, as with any other of these, this type of relatively small tax that impacts many taxpayers is somewhat controversial. But I've been impressed by the fact that in the past, opposition to this tax, or not, opposition to the, let me clarify. opposition to this tax has been used as an argument for not putting it before the voters. And I think that's backwards. I think, you know, that this is simply to put something before the voters for them to decide whether it's regressive or it's a bad idea or it's a great idea. And cities and states around the country are struggling, as we are, with things like Americans with Disabilities Act compliance, with things like simply making the streets usable for all users, not just people driving cars. And granted, a lot of working people are driving cars. And I understand the argument, right? A lot of them are driving cars that are probably not very energy efficient because they're older cars. So I totally understand that concern expressed by Councilor Sena. But I do support this going to the full council because I think we need to look at where we're going. Our gross receipts tax and our revenue to build roadways is going to be going down. And I shouldn't say build them because, I mean, we just did hear from Councilor Borrego about the bill that's coming up, which is the quarter-cent tax. But this is an important potential revenue source. And the roads take a beating. So it's not only working people will be paying for this, but large truckers that come through here and fill up, they will be paying for it. People who are put in a lot of miles on the road will be paying for the roads that they use. And there's a fairness to that as well. So, you know, I do support the idea of going forward without recommendation. But I'm asking the counselors on this committee and the council as a whole, when it gets there, I hope it does, to give it a fair and square discussion and put it before the voters. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Counselor. So I show 3 hands raised. 2 hands raised now, I guess. Counselor Davis, I think you were up next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as you're right, I think the original motion is for a do pass. If the council or the committee chair wanted to withdraw that and move to a no rec, I'd be fine with that as well. But let me just, I want to address Councilor Sena's question because the last time we worked on this, I think we had a lot of discussion and I'd love to have it again because I think the world and the economy is different. And quite frankly, the focus of our council is a little different. And so this is exactly the right time. But I think some of that analysis showed us, and what helped to persuade me in the end last time to say yes, was that the beneficiaries of this tax are most often those of lowest economic ability, which is primarily those BIPOC folks in neighborhoods like all over our city, but predominantly clustered in my district, Councilor Pena's district, and your district. Because this builds public transit access. It builds safe pedestrian routes that we're behind on, as Councilor Benton mentioned, about ADA access and wide sidewalk accessibility, bike trails, et cetera. The quarter-cent tax has generally been used for those big projects, those big ideas that deal with cars. But this is really something that could help us. And we're struggling through the budget. As we remember, we passed a resolution supporting a fare-free bus system that essentially has been sort of put on pause because of our economic situation. I would propose that this is a route to do that in a way that folks driving cars could help us build those other opportunities for people who don't pay the gas tax. And so I think it's a good discussion to have. It is right about who pays and who benefits. There's never an easy answer, and that dynamic changes. But I was convinced last time that the folks who need it most benefit most from the beneficiaries of this. And so I'd love to visit with the sponsor, Councilor Benton, perhaps on I'm all for the general roadways. I think that's important. We all have neighborhood issues. We just looked through the quarter cent list and carved that up in just a few weeks on big projects, and still have lots of neighborhood issues and transit issues to deal with. So, but I'd love to look at maybe this would be a way for us to prioritize transit and some of those investments in Vision Zero and other things that we lack the funding for now. So maybe I'd love to visit with the sponsor on that. Maybe Councilor Senna, it'd be great to have you in that conversation as well. And maybe we could to allocate some of that money in different proportions like we've done in other taxes in the past. So, but I will defer to the sponsor on whether she wants to keep that in motion or not. Or the chair, sorry.
So since I'm doing this for Counselor Benton, he seems amenable to going with a no rec, so I will change the motion to no recommendation. Is was that a second for that, Counselor Davis? Thank you. So, okay, we still have hands raised though. Counselor Pena? Oh, but Bassan, I'm sorry, Bassan. I think you were next.
Oh, you did it at the same time. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the sake of that good conversation, because I agree that this is definitely worth a conversation, can the administration, when this is heard before full council, and perhaps we'll already have another briefing or catch up on where we stand currently or the most current numbers with gross receipts tax, and how it has either declined or how significantly or not, please?
I think we get the gross receipts tax report monthly, like around the 20th or the 25th.
Madam Chair, if we can make sure to have some kind of presentation, though, I think that that would be valid for really making sure that we're all kind of caught up on it and very clear on,
Madam Chair?
this is going to be
Yeah.
where we're.
Yes.
Madam Chair, Renee Martinez, Director for Finance Administrative Services. And yeah, we would be happy to provide information, presentation, whatever you'd like to help frame the conversation at the council meeting around this topic. We just received the June GRT distribution, so that will be information that we can fold into the presentation. So yes, we'd be happy to provide that information.
Thank you so much. I think that that'll be really good to make a robust conversation for all of us.
Very good. Good idea. So, Counselor Pena, your hand is raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually just wanted to kind of reiterate what Councilor Benton was saying. I really appreciate him talking about ADA compliance. As you know, that's something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. And I appreciate those comments. I would just love to see that as we move this bill forward, and perhaps this is a question for Director Yada, to actually put an amendment forward within this bill, and not to present tonight because obviously I don't want to have you drafted on the fly, to really talk about a concentration on that for the ADA. And then also, we're putting this bill forward for racial equity, and if we can include some of that language in terms of some of the development, because unfortunately, in my neighborhood and the community here, and I'm sure in Councilor Davis's and parts of Councilor Benton's, every time we increase a tax, we're still behind the 8 ball here in District 3. And I don't know when we're going to catch up. You hear me say this, I sound like a broken record, but we really need to, when we're passing this kind of tax, we really need to focus on areas that have been underserved and don't have the basic infrastructure that other parts of the city already have. So if you can just think about that, Director Yada, those 2 amendments, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Right. So I don't see any more hands. If there are no other questions or comments, we'll move towards a roll call vote, please.
Councillor Bassan,
Yes.
Councillor Davis,
Yes.
Councillor Pena,
Yes.
Councillor Senna,
Yes.
Councillor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
Thank you. All right, so now we'll go back and pick up item D. Counselor Davis, would you like to do this one?
Sure, Madam Chair, and thank you. I don't think that this is a legislation I don't think will take very long. 084 amends Chapter 12, Article 2, Section 29 of the revised ordinances relating to public order to prescribe criminal threats of mass violence. Really quickly by background. So in 2016, I was contacted by one of our school resource officers at Highland High School. Some of you know Officer Rob DeBuck, who does a lot of our active shooter training and community work. He retired and came back to work as an SRO. And he called me because there was a threat of a mass shooting at Highland High School communicated to students by social media. And when they went to get a warrant to find out, to the social media company, a subpoena, to find out who owned that device that transmitted it, it turns out that technically wasn't illegal in New Mexico because it wasn't a bomb threat, because our threat ordinances were written in the 60s and 70s when you could only telephone something like that in, and our laws had not kept up. And so this council passed a school safety ordinance that made it illegal to transmit a threat of violence against a school via social media or any other means of communication. We were the first in the Southwest to do that, the only one in New Mexico still. And since then, APD used that in the first year to track down the authors of 4 threats against schools in the city of Albuquerque. You can see those online. We posted some of those stories online, and APD's used that. And so earlier this year, our staff came to us and said, it might be a good idea to extend this not just to schools, but to any location. And so that's what this legislation does. It simply says state law hasn't caught up in terms of bomb threats and whatnot. But in the city of Albuquerque, if you use a social media device, if you text it, if you send it by Facebook, if you create an anonymous account on Instagram and threaten a business, we have the tools to go after those folks, to identify them quickly and to determine if that threat is real and reasonable. And so that's what this legislation does. It amends our 2016 ordinance to create a new ordinance, a new threat against other places of business, commerce, recreation, or entertainment, including, by the way, City Hall. And so, Madam Chair, I'd move 084 with a recommendation for due pass. Madam Chair, we're not able to hear you. I'm sorry.
Okay, I think we're all going to become excellent lip readers doing Zoom meetings. One hand is raised, Counselor Bassan. So did you want to speak, or is that for a second? Second, okay, all right, thank you very much. So if there are no other comments or questions on this, what about the administration or Ms. Holtz? Does anyone else have anything to add? Okay, we don't seem to have anybody else. So let's go for a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Bassan?
Yes.
Counselor Davis?
Yes, and I'm grateful Counselor Bassan and I found something we agree on tonight.
Counselor Pena?
Yes.
Counselor Sena?
Yes.
Counselor Gibson?
Yeah.
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
All right, next on the agenda is item F. I will move this for Counselor Benton. This is 031, authorizing the issuance and sale of City of Albuquerque Transportation Infrastructure Gross Receipts Tax Improvement Revenue Bonds. Counselors, do we have any questions on this? We do have one hand raised. Counselor Pena, go ahead.
I was doing a
that's-
second.
Thank you. Thank you for the second. Anyone else have any? Okay, Counselor Benton. Go ahead.
Thank
please.
you. Thank you, committee members, for considering this. We've had a lot of discussion about this tax. This tax was renewed by the voters and or approved to be renewed by the voters. And we've taken a somewhat different approach from previous years on this. I've tried to to look at equity across our districts. You know, the fact is, this tax has generated funds that in the past, there have been entire council districts with no projects funded under this tax. And at the risk of becoming somewhat, well, let's just call it assertive about the use of the tax, we've tried to identify projects in each district. Now, it's not just equal across the board, as sometimes is done with these road projects. We do recognize that there's a major project on the west side that's a regional priority and a city priority. And as Councilor Borrego spoke earlier, expressed, it's a critical issue that still needs more funding, but by putting a big down payment, I'm confident that Councilor Borrego and others will be able to get the project fully funded. And otherwise, you know, we're trying to share the wealth a little bit across the board. And there's a lot to be said for that. It's not just splitting a baby or anything, but we all know our districts very well. And I think I look at this list and I see a group of projects that's all very defensible, and including many projects for the administration. We're not by any means saying that they are the experts, the folks, a lot of the road builders and folks in DMD and our friends there. And we appreciate the administration's working with the council on this bill. But as to the details of the bond sale, you know, this is the thing we talked about. Now we've been talking about for a couple of months or more, that instead of just using these funds as they dribble in and we're able to do one project at a time, we are looking to sell bonds so that we can build a significant amount of projects. And I want to give a shout out to the administration. This administration is recognized, especially during the economic downturn and basically people out of work due to the health emergency, that this is a time to build as much as we can. So I appreciate all the counselors working with me on this and with the administration's working so well with us as a council on this. But just want to urge your support. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Counselor. I don't see any other hands that are raised. So let's go ahead and go for a roll call vote, please.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes on a 5-0 vote.
Madam Chair,
Thank you, counselors.
Madam Chair, hello,
Yes.
this is Isaac.
Yes, Isaac?
Yeah, can we request immediate action on this?
Yes, and we need to go back to the first one, the first
The first
item
EC?
A, we'll ask for immediate action. So let's go ahead and move, I'll go ahead and move for immediate action on our, I'm sorry, 031. There a second? Have a second from Counselor Davis? And could we do a vote, please?
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes. Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. And going back to item A, that was EC 135, the agreement with Albuquerque Housing Authority utilizing community development block grants in the amount of $1,639,655. Would like to move that for immediate action. Do I have a second? There's a second from Counselor Bassan. And could we take a vote, please?
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. All right, then. Now I believe we're on G. This is R86, creating a task force to explore options for implementing minimum sick leave requirements in the city. And I'll move a do pass on this. The write-up, I think, was done pretty well. This is a really simple resolution, and this is in response to several attempts to provide a methodology of getting employees paid sick leave. And so the idea behind this is a 6-person task force. And I'll move a do pass if I have a second.
Second.
Okay, I do have a second. I almost gave up. Thank you, Counselor Davis. So any comments on this? Anyone want to weigh in? Okay, Counselor Sena. Go ahead, please.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. I am very interested in this because, of course, we attempted paid sick leave here, and I am very invested in it. However, my concern here, and I'm sure this will go on to council as a discussion as well, that it states it's a fact-finding task force. For me, in terms of discussing paid sick leave, I think that officials with a background concerning public health should certainly be on that task force. And I think that having another seat on there that relates to exactly that, we've studied this under the Bieber study as a business issue, but I think that this is an important topic to study as well as a public health issue, since we are in a pandemic and a public health emergency. So I am interested to see what this task force may bring, but I think that we really can't wait in some avenues, of course, because we are in a pandemic and we're seeing the benefits of paid sick leave, since we do have that access on a federal level due to COVID at this moment. So I'm interested what the full conversation may be brought forward during the full council in this discussion, but really I don't think we should wait for a task force because I think conversations are going to move forward, but I'm still interested to see what could be discussed. So thank you.
Certainly, thank you. And Counselor Bassan, your hand is raised.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Julian is so fast. We keep canceling each other out. I'm not going to do it anymore, Julian. I'm wondering, do we have a selection process of who gets to apply for this task force, and how will they be decided to sit on all sides of it? Or is that going to be something that will be researched and implemented if this gets passed?
So there's not anything that's spelled out in the resolution. What we've done in the past was have staff and council, put together a task force going forward. But we can certainly amend the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was just curious, kind of what the metric is going to be and how it's going to be decided who gets to sit on that. If just a big pool of employees and businesses, and then it's just I'm assuming going to be kind of an application process. Come on, maybe there's going to be a big pool of people that are really interested in being on this task force.
And again, it obviously can be amended, but right now the way it's written is to keep it rather small. I think 3 and 3.
Right. No, I read that, Madam Chair. I just wasn't sure how they're going to get selected, but it sounds to me like that will be up to council staff.
That's been usual procedure, but we can change that.
Thank you.
Mhm. And Counselor Benton.
First of all, Madam Chair, I'm not a member of this committee, although I keep talking on several issues. So I want to, if there's any objection from the committee, I'm more than happy to stop talking. But yeah, I appreciate the intent here by you, Madam Chair. And I just want to say, I think, my experience since we went down in a blazing defeat earlier this summer, that since then I've had some good conversations with folks that I started conversations with before that vote. And I'm talking about business people now, not advocates. I really appreciate some of the advocates who have pointed out that, look, yeah, we know this is hard for business, but we've got to be fair across the board. I mean, the workers, without the workers, the businesses can't operate. And so, we do have to understand their perspective as well. But I made it a point to listen to those who in the business community who want to offer a way forward, because as I've said, I'm not trying to be arrogant or anything, but I've said that I'm not going to stop on this. This is something to me that is fundamental to the rights of workers. Pardon me if I'm offended anyone, but I do. And I know times are tough, and times are tough across the board. So I was really interested to hear from people who I've known for years and who are respected members of the business community who offered something that they thought could work. And I think that's where we need to go. And if this is the venue to continue that conversation, I'm all for it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to add to that? Councilor Pena, you're looking very expectantly at me, but your hand's not raised. Did you have anything that you wanted to say?
I'm looking at 9 people and 6 names.
Okay. All right, then. So, well, there is a motion on the floor to move a due pass. And I think we're ready to take a vote, if you would, please.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
I'm going to say no, only because I agree that 6 months it's a long time. So I'm going to say no.
Counselor Sena,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes by a 4-1 vote.
Thank you. So next is item H. Counselor Pena, this is your R89. Would you like to move it?
Thank you, Madam President. I mean, what the heck is it, Madam Chairwoman?
Yes, close.
R89 is delaying the implementation of the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code, IECC, for a period of approximately 6 months to allow the construction industry time to adapt to the new requirements, requiring a study to be conducted on the price increase of residential development associated with the requirements of 2018 IECC. I actually wish that it was written opposite, because it's more about the concern of pricing people out of a home, but I mean, this is the way it is. I just want, I think there's an amendment also in the packet. Let me look for it. This is actually just doing it to coincide with what the state has done. And the amendment is, it would be committee amendment number 1. And it is on page 193, amend the title as follows: delaying the implementation of the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code until March 1st, 2021. and to allow the construction, so yada, yada. And then on the bottom, it just says, on page 2, section 1, delaying the implementation of 2018 Energy Conservation Code by not implementing it until March 1, 2021. And this is just to mirror, this amendment is just to ensure the delay of the 2018 code doesn't conflict with the state's adoption of the energy code. Without reading everything, that's basically it. And all I'm trying to do is just really find out what we need to do in the interim to make sure that once we pass this, as you know, I actually supported it when we passed it originally, but I really want to find out, you know, if this is going to price people out of homes, what's that impact going to be in our economy to people, first-time home owners, folks who are renting downtown and some of these older apartments that if, you know, the landlord decides to use, do renovations and this energy code's implemented, does it price them out of living downtown because of the cost increase? I mean, I know there's a study that was conducted and it has some of the information in there, but I think it doesn't look at it necessarily through that lens. And all this would do is really delay it to mirror the state. And then there's something in there that I was told by staff that we actually can't have anything stricter or less stricter than the state. So this will give us an opportunity to provide those amendments when that time comes as well. And I think we have Shanna, and Shanna, you could probably do a better job of explaining all this for me.
Sure, Madam Chair, Councilor Pena. Yeah, I think you spoke really well to the amendment and to the bill. What local municipalities are not allowed to do is to have a code that is less restrictive than what the state has adopted. And so when the city of Albuquerque adopted their version of the 2018 Energy Code a couple weeks back, it was amended by Councilor Borrego to call for that analysis within 30 days of that adoption, so that the city of Albuquerque could understand where their code is different from the state of New Mexico. That called on both council planning staff, that's myself, and city planning staff to do that analysis. And hopefully the council will have that analysis in hand in just a couple weeks from now. I can answer any other specific questions about the bill itself or the floor amendment that Councilor Pena proposed as they come up by the committee members.
Does anyone have any follow-up questions for Ms. Schultz or the sponsor? Yes, Councilor Sena.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. I know the sponsor, as Councilor Pena, had discussed kind of the implementation through the state, and I have not been following up on that. And I know that the governor did mention that this is one of the priorities that she does have, at least towards going towards a more greener New Mexico. So my question was really what kind of the updates of the state. I know that the last time we were having this conversation, they said that they were just going to get together soon, possibly have this conversation. So either Councilor Pena or Ms. Schultz can give that update. That would be appreciated.
Madam Chair and Councilor Sena, yes. So since the last time we had a conversation about this at full council, the state has adopted a 2018 version of the code, and there are 2 dates that are worth noting as you make your considerations for this bill. First off, that 2018 version does not go into effect at the state level until September 25th of this year. And at that point, a grace period starts where development in New Mexico can choose to develop under either the 2009 code or the 2018 code until March 1st of next year. So there's a grace period where you get an option to choose whichever code you want. And then come March of next year, it's 2018 only. That'll be the only code that you can develop under, which ties into Councilor Pena's amendment about making our 2018 code effective March 1st of 2021.
So, yes, Councilor Sena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to ask a follow-up question. So essentially, this amendment and the dates that you're proposing would be in compliance to what the state has just enacted in terms of a grace period.
Madam Chair, Counselor Sena, yes. A little different in that come September 25th, folks will have the option to develop under the 2018 code at the state level, whereas Albuquerque will keep it simply at the 2009 code until March 1st. That certainly doesn't prevent someone from developing to the 2018 code because it's more strict. It would certainly at least be in compliance with the 2009, but the option to develop under the 2018 code is more explicit at the state level once that grace period starts.
Okay. And Counselor Davis, you have your hand up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to ask, so just by point of clarification, and I think we can do this, but so the city of Albuquerque's already passed our code, right? I understand the mayor's already signed it, which means it goes into effect 5 days from publishing, which could be any day now, depending on how quickly that moves. So essentially, the city of Albuquerque is going to have the 2018 code. Absent some amendment, that'll be in place long before the state, and our process started long before the state, I might add. And so, we've developed this. I see Ms. Schultz sort of shaking her head or not saying yes. We've worked through this process with the planning department, but I'm also sensitive to the fact that when we put our codes in place, they sort of do flip a switch all of a sudden, maybe in a week or so, basically. And so I'd be sensitive to the idea that we need to give our planning department time. Some of the construction folks have projects that are a week or two away from applying that would cost a lot of money to reapply, but there's an incentive for them to do it under these new codes. Certainly, I'd be open to a grace period, but I don't think waiting until February because the state was slower than us makes any sense, because everybody knows we're going through this process. Everybody involved has been providing comments for over 2 years. And so if the chair could clarify for me, what is could you clarify, Madam Chair, what's the motion on the floor? Is it just the motion for a due pass on the Councilor Peñas?
Due pass, and I don't believe we have a second yet.
Actually, I read into the record, we don't have a second on my motion, or I read into the record the amendment, so we're still waiting on that as well.
Sure. Madam Chair, if the counselor doesn't have a second on hers, I'd like to propose an alternative amendment that would allow us to have a sort of that flexible option to apply under either code, but also a little shorter grace period that I think makes more sense for the city. And so I'd sort of say if the counselor doesn't have a second, I'd offer another amendment.
We need a second on the bill first.
Well, Madam Chair, if I may, I was planning on giving it a second, but I will defer to the sponsor if she wants to hear Counselor Davis's instead, but my intention was to second it.
So
Actually, seconding the bill is necessary, and then Counselor Davis will readjust the amendment to whatever he thinks.
I
So
offer
the second.
All right. So we do have the Counselor Davis's amendment that we can put up on the screen. Is that ready, Mr. Moya? Okay. So would you like to address the amendment, Counselor Davis?
Sure. And if it's okay with the sponsor, since it's both of us, I assume you and I can do this together, but I'm sorry. Essentially what this amendment does is that it, on page 1, line 2, it adds the word final before implementation. On page 1, line 3, adds the word grace before period and strike the remainder. Page 1, delete lines 4 through 7. On page 1, delete the language of 6 months, add fully before implement. On page 1, delete 18 through 25. On page 2, delete lines 1 through 14. And on page 2, strike 17 through 20, replace with the following: a grace period during the 63 days following publication of O12, the administration shall receive and process qualified applications for building permits under the 18 codes or under the 2009 codes. And then on page 2, delete 21 through 32. If Mr. Moya would go to the explanation at the bottom, it'll make this a whole lot easier in English than me try to do this way. Essentially, this amendment removes any requirement for a study, because I think that's been done by the staff, and we can see some of that in the analysis. Additionally, instead of a 6 or 7 month delay, this would be a 2-month delay, allowing a 60-day essentially period where anyone could apply under either code, and then the city's code would go into effect after that 2-month grace period. It's a good compromise. It gives our staff time to adjust. planning department ready to go and gives due notice for folks that want to participate. And we think this is a good compromise.
Okay. And is that your motion for the amendment, Counselor Davis?
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, just to be clear, yes, I would move amendment, I assume, number 1.
Okay, I'll go ahead and second that. So any questions on the, I do have a hand raised, Counselor Pena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Shanna, does that study, do you feel that that study adequately, because I know it mentions some of this stuff in there, but do you think it adequately answers the question that I was trying to get to in terms of, you know, the cost of housing or rentals, the price increase?
Madam Chair, Councillor Pena, I believe that your resolution was drafted to specifically address populations of low income and populations with a high rate of folks of color. And the study that was done by Pacific Northwest National Labs, I think, took a more general approach. They looked at construction costs across the state, and also in the various climate zones within the state. But I think what your resolution is calling for is a more drilled down analysis on the populations that you are particularly concerned for within Albuquerque.
Thank you. And I just wanted to make that clear because I know there's been some discussion that it's covered in the study, and that's not accurate. I don't feel is accurate, you know. And so when we're talking about people of color and we're talking about all these bills that we're trying to pass, and even the firearm bills that we're trying to pass, I mean, when we're talking about people of color, we really need to address those things so that we can move forward. As I said before, I supported the original bill. Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I supported the original bill. And I think it's important, but I think it's important that we address these concerns moving forward as a city. I think that we need to make sure that we can, at least if we find out that the price increase is going to be pretty significant, that I think that we should be able to actually put in some incentives or something to help relieve the burden of that cost if it's what I think it may be. And that's just a reality, Councillor Gibson. Thank you.
I was listening.
You were speaking volumes.
No, I was listening. So I have a question, a follow-up also on the Northwest Pacific study. That never really looked at incomes or income levels for different neighborhoods. Is that correct? That was what I got when I was reading that report, or the summary of that report in the memo, was that they were looking strictly at costs, construction costs, between the code that we were under in 2009 and then compared that to 2018, and then long-term, short-term and long-term savings. That's what I remember getting from that that study. So I'm truly not really sure what study that you would like to have done, Councillor Pena. Is it more of a income level study of where people are buying homes, or where we would want people to be able to buy homes? Is that what you're looking
so
at?
with many, thank you, Councillor Gibson. So with many of the things that we have, including our transportation tax that we just passed, and talking about what Councillor Benton was talking about ADA compliance, and about how communities in needs have historically not received kind of the services that they need in the area. This is another way that we can be proactive to make sure that we look at, when we implement this energy code, that we are not bumping people out of housing. So it would really be specific, as Mrs. Schultz said, it would be very specific for people of color and how that would impact that community with those rising costs. I know there's some number out there that Councillor Davis talks about, that it's it's a $6,000 benefit over the life of a loan. Well, that's awesome. But if you can't even get into the house because the price has increased by $10,000, that's another story. So that's what I'm looking at.
Okay, so I'm not sure where we are. I think we were on the amendment. Oh,
Well, I
I'm
can't
sorry.
support the amendment. It does away with the study, so I can't support the amendment. I appreciate the compromise, but it does away with the study. That was my
Okay.
primary concern. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Counselor Sena.
Thank you for that, Madam Chair. I am interested as to how this does impact communities of colors, of course. However, I did address this when we had the vote. But I think Councilor Pena's amendment and the adjustment of this delay makes more sense to me. I'm just curious where the 2-month, if it was just created as kind of a compromise between the two to allow that delay of implementation. And I think, Councilor Pena's amendment, adjusting the date more towards to what the state was addressing, I think, fits well with that delay, whether it's that time to do this study of how it impacts or not. But I think that the whole issue should be brought forward to full council so that we can have a more robust conversation. In terms of the month and timeline, I think that should also go before full council to have that discussion, because there's this discussion of whether we should go in compliance with what the state had to offer while also having this grace period. And for me, I think it would be beneficial for us all to have the real discussion as to how further back we would delay it or if we should delay it. So that's my thoughts on the amendments. I think for me, I will support Councilor Pena's amendment in terms of the delay of just because it coincides with the state. And I'm just curious, would like more information as to just the 2 months grace period.
So Counselor Benton, maybe you can give us some clarification, if you wouldn't mind, sir.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I think there's some lack of clarity as to whether I could sponsor this since I'm not on this committee. So, but I was involved in drafting this, at full disclosure. 2 months is more than enough time for any professional contractor who is working on their project to complete an application. I'm speaking here as a former building professional myself, as an architect and builder, to complete their application, this allows them to do so under the old code. Councilor Pena's bill stops everything in its tracks. It really should be a repeal because this code has been enacted already. So there are a lot of problems with Councilor Pena's legislation. And I strongly believe, as written, that should not go forward. It's going to create a lot of confusion. The mayor has signed, and this code is going into effect presently. And this amendment allows a 2-month grace period where similar to the state, during that time, an applicant can apply under the old code or the new code. It does remove the study. And I really want to push back against the idea that this somehow is going to affect people of color. I can tell you it will affect people of color and disadvantaged persons who rent, because their utilities typically are being paid by themselves. The old days when the landlord paid the utilities and then jacked up the rent on a tenant are gone. Furthermore,
Madam Chair, point of order.
Matt,
Counselor Benton be speaking. He's not a committee member. I'm sorry.
That's true, but we have been letting him speak during the meeting on other issues and other pieces of legislation. So
if
he knows more about, so I think that
Matt,
it's only fair
Matt,
that he does
So
come.
then maybe perhaps this should go to full council, and it heeds the argument that I was making earlier, that when we're voting on these very sensitive bills, that they should all just go straight to full council so that other councillors that are passionate about it, just like Councillor Benton, which I support, I would be arguing it as well. But these bills should really be heard amongst the full council.
Okay,
Madam
so
Chair.
let's go ahead and let
Madam
Council
Chair.
finish what he's saying.
Typically, it's the custom of the council to allow someone with a serious stake in a piece of legislation, as I have clearly in this case, to speak before a committee. So I reject that request, and I hope this committee will not go along with that.
And Madam Chair, we allowed Council Borrego to speak on legislation earlier today without any objection from the committee.
So,
I was not able to finish my statement, but
okay, go ahead.
you know, I'm not sure where I was interrupted, but I mean, I think we need to keep an order going here. So again, as I often have, or not that often really, but on occasion I have attended committees to which I'm not a member and spoken, and I think other councilors have as well. So I do have a perspective on this. I was a sponsor of the original bill. I fought for this original bill for years in the face of total obstruction on the part of some people in the industry. And what I think I was saying at the time that I was interrupted was that people of color and folks who are in no position whatsoever and are a long way from home ownership, and who by their circumstances have no choice but to rent their apartments or houses or casitas or whatever it may be that they rent, deserve to have a dwelling which is, first of all, going to be safe and reasonably comfortable in the face of warming temperatures and oftentimes, you know, buildings where it's so hot inside that it's difficult to sleep at night. But if they just have a regular old apartment, they're going to be paying their gas and electric bill, all right? Not the landlord. And this legislation will give them relief. Now, is it going to fix everything? Is it going to fix every old house? Councilor Pena was quoted in the Journal as saying that this had somehow to do with gentrification. You know, the affordability of a house in any part of the city has to include the cost of utilities. By definition, if you're really looking at people's net available income to pay for their housing, the cost of those utilities is part of it. So I really reject the idea that this somehow is disproportionately affecting working people. To the contrary, it's in their interest. And it's not going to fix every old house in town that is rented or sold. It's not going to fix every old apartment building in the city that is rented or sold to a new investor.
Madam Chair, I'd like to
It won't change that.
Sorry to interrupt. I feel like this is inappropriate, Councilor Benton. I'm sorry. This is a long thing for something that you had said earlier, that if we were uncomfortable with you speaking, that you would respect that. But this is going on long enough that either if Ms. Holtz can clarify or if we can call the question, I think that would be better. But this seems long.
All right. Well, thank you for considering this. I was speaking to the specifics of what is being proposed, both by Councilor Pena and by the amendments.
Okay, let's go to Counselor Sena and then Counselor Pena.
Well, so I had a few questions, but I think I'm going to save that to go to full council because I think, it is important. For me, the original intent of this resolution is to evaluate it as a race and social equity issue. Although I do have my own contentions, as I had stated before, about how it relates to the IECC code implementation. But I think that it should go before full council with its original intent, and I would encourage the sponsors of the amendment to possibly bring that forward again before full council to have that discussion, because I think as we discuss it, it should have its original intent. So I am a support of Councillor Pena's amendment in that, of course, it's addressing the key issues at hand, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I support the full delay of it, of course. And I think, again, we should have this full conversation in front of full council. And, my question goes more towards planning and the delay of its implementation, how that would take effect. And for those that are pulling permits now, compared to later, once we have to implement the IECCs. So I'm supportive of this amendment, but I think it should go before full council. So I think that we can just move towards that vote.
Okay. Counselor Pena.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just back to what Councillor Benton, when he was speaking, it wasn't that I had a problem with him speaking. It was just that he did say that if we had concern with him jumping in, that he would actually not speak. So, but, I appreciate, and yes, he is the sponsor of this. So, I appreciate, his concerns with it. But my whole thing isn't, when we're talking about not understanding kind of the issues that I'm bringing up, it kind of goes into that social thing that we have these institutional racism within our city government that we don't really realize, and that we're really working hard to try to bring to light now. And these are things when we're not taking into consideration that people of color, it may hinder them from purchasing a home once this energy code is implemented, and how we address that. So again, my support of this bill has always been there. It's just that I want to make sure that we're not pricing people out of homes or pricing people out of rentals. Is there going to be a long-term benefit? Absolutely. Is the cost of your gas going to go down? So what's being missed here is that if you can't afford that house, you're not going to be able to get that benefit until you move to the next level of that. But back to Councillor Sena's concern is that, I'm amenable to what Councillor Davis was talking about in terms of mirroring what the state is doing. But I think the study is important. I think the study helps us to be able to identify if it's a barrier for home ownership or a barrier towards housing, that we absolutely need to figure out how we address that. And when you're talking about gentrification, the reason I say gentrification is because there's a lot of homes downtown that are people that are living in affordable houses, and these old houses that people have owned historically, Councillor Benton, and Hispanics and people of color have lived in these houses. And when they get renovated and all these codes are put into place, lots of people get priced out of their community. This is what happens. And what I'm saying is that, is it a bad thing? No, it's a good thing, as long as we address the underlying issues that prevail in our community. So,
All right.
Councillor Davis, I don't know if you want to add your part to it and leave the study in and then move it to full council. I'm cool.
So
Well,
Counselor Davis, go ahead, please.
I'm sorry. Thanks, Madam Chair. I know this has gotten to be a robust discussion, and it's always fun. But so what I hear the intent of the committee is that they would like to move this to full council for further discussion. And so in that interest, I'll withdraw my amendment. And I think if we could get to a no rec on the floor of the committee, I think that would be fine for us to get this to council at our next meeting.
All right, then it's my understanding that we're moving the bill unamended as a no rec. Is that correct? Counselor Senna? Oh, that's the second? Or what? Peace.
That's a
Okay.
second.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a roll call vote.
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
Yes.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Senna,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
Passes on 5-0 vote.
Very good, thank you. All right, that is the last item on the agenda. Since we have no other business. Oh, there's a hand raised. Ms. Schultz.
Madam Chair, I don't wonder if the committee might consider immediate action on this item, as the 2018 code will be implemented in the city of Albuquerque any day now. If these conversations could have the potential to be concluded before that happens, then we wouldn't end up bouncing between codes for a couple of weeks.
I'd move immediate action.
There's a motion and a second for immediate action. Could we have a roll call vote, please?
Counselor Bassan,
Yes.
Counselor Davis,
No.
Counselor Pena,
Yes.
Counselor Senna,
Yes.
Counselor Gibson.
Yes.
That's a 4-1 vote. I believe immediate action must be unanimous. So that fails.
All right. All right. So there being no other business, we'll be adjourned. Thank you, everybody.